Folks on Reddit are calling me out saying I don't understand retaliation. The truth is I may not. So I brought in attorney Ron Zambrano to help me understand it better.
The Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni legal saga has captured public attention, but a fundamental misunderstanding about retaliation law threatens to derail the entire narrative. Recent legal analysis reveals that much of what the public perceives as retaliation may not qualify as such under the law, potentially undermining Lively's case in ways that few anticipated.
Now, here's what they quoted me as saying. Look, here's my thing. I really don't believe all that. I'll be honest. This idea that Jed wasn't out there creating ghost accounts to sort of try to amplify other organic real posts seems silly to me. I understand why they're trying to sort of avoid admitting that because that's where this whole thing comes from. But for me personally, the definition of retaliation and smear would be putting stuff out that's not true.
The controversy centers on allegations that Baldoni and his associates orchestrated a social media campaign designed to damage Lively's reputation following her sexual harassment complaints during the production of It Ends With Us.
Create negative narratives that aren't realistic. And I didn't see any of that. I didn't see any of that when I was reporting. So it's hard for me to believe he did nothing. You can pause and read the rest. And he's wrong. Retaliation claim does not require a false statement or even proof of harassment. And we have to understand this concept. You are a boss. Employee reports you for SH, protected action. However, it's 100% false. You catch employee stealing from the company. For this reason, you fire employee, not adverse action. You tell others that employee stole from the company, so you fired him, her. As a result, employee suffers damage to his reputation. This can be adverse effect.
However, employment law attorney Ron Zambrano's recent breakdown of the case exposes critical gaps between public perception and legal reality that could prove devastating for Lively's legal strategy. This analysis cuts through the media speculation to examine the technical legal definitions that will ultimately determine the case's outcome, revealing why some of the most sensational allegations may be legally irrelevant. To understand the legal complexities at play, one must first distinguish between the court of public opinion and the court of law.
Give rise to claim of retaliation. It doesn't matter if the employee can't prove SH. It also doesn't matter what you said about employee is 100% true.
Blake Lively's lawsuit against Justin Baldoni encompasses multiple claims, including sexual harassment and retaliation allegations stemming from their work relationship on It Ends With Us. The case has drawn significant attention due to allegations of a sophisticated social media campaign allegedly orchestrated by Baldoni's team, including publicist Judd Wallace and Tag PR. Public discourse has focused heavily on social media manipulation, ghost accounts, and coordinated efforts to damage Lively's reputation through amplified negative narratives.
That matters because of the working relationship. Technically, legal definition-wise, the retaliation is really about Justin and Blake. Now, if Justin hires this campaign, does that now put it on the hook of Justin is retaliating because of the actions of his employees?
No.
However, the legal framework governing these allegations operates under strict definitional parameters that differ substantially from colloquial understanding. Employment retaliation, defamation, and harassment each carry specific legal requirements that must be met for claims to succeed in court. The distinction becomes particularly crucial when examining the various parties involved. While Baldoni served as both Lively's co-star and the film's director, the employment relationships between all parties create a complex web that determines which legal theories can be successfully pursued.
Retaliation then comes into play just because Justin's fighting back because of the SH allegation. That is still where we stand, and that's ultimately what's, I guess, kept us all afloat?
Yes, exactly.
The case has also attracted attention due to Lively's recent subpoenas targeting various content creators and media personalities, a move that has drawn criticism from legal experts as potentially counterproductive to her overall strategy. The fundamental issue plaguing public understanding of this case lies in the confusion between defamation and retaliation as legal concepts. Defamation requires proof that someone communicated false statements to third parties that caused harm to the subject's reputation.
If they can prove that Wayfair sanctioned, right? If Lively can establish that Wayfair is the one that sanctioned these likes that amplified something that led to her harm, that from a being able to show up in court may stick, okay? But whether she wins is convincing the jury that the reason they did that conduct was a reaction to her, only to her SH complaint.
This tort exists independently of any employment relationship and focuses solely on the truth or falsity of the statements made. Retaliation, from a technical legal standpoint, requires an entirely different framework. It necessitates an employment relationship between the parties where one party holds power over another. The classic example involves an employee reporting misconduct to a supervisor, who then takes adverse action against the employee due to that report. This distinction proves critical when examining the allegations against Jed Wallace and Tag PR.
This is starting to come there. She's now being labeled a toxic again by experts now for subpoenaing us, which is just backfired. I've seen so many experts come forward. Last quick thought. What is your thought on her subpoenaing myself and other creators? Google stuff. Would you have ever done that? Is this a good move?
It's a terrible move.
These parties had no employment relationship with Blake Lively, meaning that regardless of their actions, they cannot be held liable for legal retaliation. Their conduct might constitute defamation if false statements were made, but the retaliation framework simply does not apply. Even more significantly, the power dynamic between Baldoni and Lively complicates potential retaliation claims. While Baldoni served as director, establishing his position of authority over Lively during production remains a more complex legal question than initially apparent.
Molly McPherson was really great. She had a whole thing. She's like, someone on her side, Blake's side, is trying to destroy her. Do you sense that at all? Could there be someone in the inside who just wants her to fail at this? Could this just be lawyers billing her? Oh yeah, let's subpoena these creators. That's going to cha-ching, cha-ching. Could that stuff happen?
No.
The legal analysis reveals that much of what has been characterized as retaliation in media coverage would more accurately be classified as potential defamation. This reclassification has profound implications for the case's viability, as defamation claims face different evidentiary standards and potential defenses. Furthermore, the motivational element in defamation cases differs from retaliation claims. While intent to harm reputation can support a defamation claim, it does not transform the action into legal retaliation absent the requisite employment power structure.
Unethical, it's not going to work from a technical standpoint. I think that's what happened. I think they said, you want us to do what? We don't think we should do that. They're like, I'm paying you, you do what I say. I'm like, okay, here's my letter to you in case this blows up in our face to cover the attorney's ass. I think that's what happened because it's a waste of time.
Applying these legal principles to the Lively-Baldoni dispute reveals significant strategic challenges for the plaintiff's case. The core retaliation claim appears limited to the relationship between Lively, Baldoni, and Wayfair Productions. This narrow scope eliminates much of the alleged social media campaign from the retaliation framework entirely. For a successful retaliation claim, Lively must demonstrate that Wayfair's adverse actions were motivated by her sexual harassment complaints rather than legitimate business or defensive purposes. This burden becomes particularly challenging given the public nature of the dispute and the various factors that could justify defensive public relations efforts. The defense strategy likely centers on establishing non-retaliatory motivations for any adverse actions. Baldoni's team can argue that their responses were legitimate business decisions or necessary reputation management rather than retaliation for harassment complaints. The existence of multiple potential motivations for the same conduct creates reasonable doubt about retaliatory intent. The involvement of third parties like Jed Wallace and Tag PR, while potentially damaging from a public relations perspective, may actually strengthen the defense's position legally. Their lack of employment relationship with Lively means their actions cannot support retaliation claims, potentially fragmenting the case into separate defamation disputes with different evidentiary requirements. The timing of various actions becomes crucial in this analysis. The defense can argue that social media activities occurred in response to public attacks rather than harassment complaints, further undermining the causal connection necessary for retaliation claims. Additionally, the good faith nature of Lively's original complaints may become a contested issue. The defense might argue that complaints were strategically motivated rather than genuine concerns, though this approach carries significant risks given the sensitive nature of harassment allegations. The Lively-Baldoni case highlights broader systemic issues within entertainment industry employment law and the intersection of traditional legal frameworks with modern social media dynamics. The case demonstrates how public relations campaigns can blur the lines between legitimate business activities and potentially tortious conduct. The legal system's struggle to address sophisticated social media manipulation reflects ongoing challenges in adapting traditional tort law to digital age realities. While the alleged ghost account networks and coordinated amplification campaigns may seem obviously harmful, proving legal liability requires meeting established evidentiary standards that may not align with contemporary understanding of harm. This disconnect between perceived harm and legal liability has significant implications for future entertainment industry disputes. The precedent set by this case could influence how similar conflicts are litigated and potentially drive legislative or regulatory responses to address gaps in current legal frameworks. The case also illustrates the risks of conflating public relations strategies with legal violations. While aggressive PR campaigns may be ethically questionable or professionally damaging, they do not automatically constitute legally actionable conduct. This distinction becomes particularly important in high-profile disputes where public opinion may diverge significantly from legal reality. Furthermore, the case raises questions about the appropriate scope of discovery in entertainment industry litigation. Lively subpoenas targeting content creators and media personalities represent an aggressive approach that could set concerning precedents for future cases involving public discourse around legal disputes. Legal experts have identified several strategic missteps in Lively's approach that could undermine her case's prospects. The decision to subpoena content creators and media personalities has drawn particular criticism as potentially counterproductive and legally questionable. This subpoena strategy appears to conflate post-lawsuit media coverage with the underlying claims, creating confusion about the temporal scope of alleged misconduct. Content created after the lawsuit was filed cannot logically support claims about pre-lawsuit retaliation, yet the subpoenas suggest an attempt to expand the case beyond its original parameters. The tactical error extends beyond legal technicalities to public relations impact. The aggressive approach toward independent content creators has generated negative coverage and positioned Lively as attempting to silence critics rather than seeking legitimate legal remedy. This perception could influence potential jurors and undermines the narrative of Lively as victim rather than aggressor. Legal practitioners suggest the subpoena strategy may reflect client pressure overriding legal judgment. The pattern suggests attorneys may have advised against the approach, but proceeded under client direction, potentially documenting their objections through formal coverage letters to protect against malpractice claims. Looking forward, the case's viability appears increasingly questionable given the technical legal challenges identified. The narrow scope of viable retaliation claims, combined with the evidentiary challenges in proving motivational elements, creates significant hurdles for success at trial. The defense's strategy of establishing non-retaliatory motivations for challenged conduct appears well-positioned given the multiple legitimate reasons that could justify the disputed actions. The ability to point to third-party actors outside the employment relationship further fragments the plaintiff's narrative and complicates causation arguments. Ultimately, this case serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of aligning legal strategy with applicable legal frameworks rather than public perception. While the court of public opinion may view certain conduct as obviously wrongful, the court of law operates under different standards that may produce unexpected results. The resolution of this dispute will likely influence future entertainment industry litigation and could drive broader discussions about updating legal frameworks to address modern social media dynamics. However, for the immediate parties involved, the case demonstrates the risks of pursuing litigation without careful consideration of applicable legal limitations and evidentiary requirements.